Good morning, guys. We are finishing up with Tales of a Fourth Grade Nothing. I know it feels like we've been reading this forever. But we've had map testing and things like that have delayed things. Plus, we have shorter days, so I think we've done pretty good. But we are going to read chapter 9 now, and we're almost finished. We get to find out if Fudge ever learns his lesson. We get to find out what happens with Dribble the turtle. I'm so excited. So when we finished reading chapter 8, it was called The TV Star. And Fudge actually got to be in a commercial that Dad was working on for, what company was Dad advertising again in chapter 8? Go ahead, everybody shout it. 1, 2, yeah! Toddle Bike, right? So Fudge gets to be in the commercial. Peter's a little upset because he wants to be in the commercial. And we find the title of the book, Peter Feels Like a Fourth Grade Nothing. He's afraid that Fudge is going to become famous, and he's just going to be plain old Peter. But now Dad knows about the commercial. Does Mom? That is the question. So our next chapter, we're going to find out. It's called Just Another Rainy Day. The next day, so the day after the commercial, the next day my father asked me how I'd like to go to the movies. Sounds fun. Just me? I asked. No, all 3 of us, he said. Remember, Mom's not here right now, right? Where is Mom? Boston, right? Mom is in Boston. Why is Mom in Boston? Her sister just had a baby. So Mom has gone to Boston. Fudge is very young to go to the movies, I said. Don't you think so? Maybe, but I can't think of anything else to do with him, and that will take up a few hours. So Dad's kind of feeling out of sorts, having to take care of Fudge by himself, isn't he? He loves to play with socks, I suggested. You could give him some socks. Socks won't last the whole afternoon, my father said. That's why I thought of the movies. What will we see, Dad? My father checked his New York magazine. A Bear's Life is playing in the neighborhood. How does that sound? What's it about? I asked. A Bear's Life, I guess, my father said. It's rated G, which means it's safe. It's approved for Fudge to watch. I was thinking of a good Western with lots of actions, or else a picture, which is another word for movie, a picture rated R, where you can't get in if you're under 17 unless you're with a parent. So he's wanting a scary movie, right? But my father had made up his mind. A Bear's Life it was. I suggested that my father get Fudge cleaned up, because by then he was looking kind of messy. I don't think my father even put him into his pajamas last night. He's been wearing the same polo shirt ever since my mother left yesterday. Remember, this is one of the reasons that Peter was looking forward to Mom being gone and Dad being in charge. He said Dad lets them get messy, and he's not particular about if they scrub under their nails or even put on their pajamas. By 1 o'clock, we were ready to go. All 3 of us wore our raincoats and rubber shoes, boots, and my father took his big black umbrella. One thing about New York, it's hard to get a cab when it's raining. But the movie theater wasn't very far away. My father said the walk would do us all good. There were a lot of puddles. It was really pouring. I like to walk in the rain, especially if it isn't too cold out. It feels nice when it gets wet. It feels nice when it wets your face. I jumped over the puddles. My father avoided them too. But not Fudge. He jumped right into everyone and splashed around like a little duck. There's a simile. It compared Fudge to a duck. By the time we got to the movie theater, the bottoms of his pants were soaked. My father took him into the men's room. He stuffed a bunch of paper towels up each pant leg so Fudge wouldn't have to sit around wet. At first, Fudge complained, but when my father bought him a big box of popcorn, he forgot all about his stuffed pants. Right after we got settled in our seats, a big boy sat down in front of Fudge, so he had to change seats with my father. Now he was on the aisle, so on the edge. I was in the middle, and my father was on the other side. When the lights dimmed, Fudge said, "Oh, dark." I told him, "Be quiet. You can't talk in the movies." "Okay, Peter," he said. That's when he started throwing his popcorn. At first, I didn't notice, but I wondered why the people in front of us were turning around every second. Then I heard Fudge whisper, "Pow! Pow! Pow!" and I saw him throw a handful of popcorn. I poked my father. "He's throwing popcorn," I whispered. My father reached across me and tapped Fudge on the leg. "If you throw one more piece, I'm going to take it away from you." "No throw," Fudge said very loud. "Shh," the people in front of us said. "Shush," Fudge said back to them. "You see," I told my father, "he's too young for the movies. He doesn't understand." But from the moment the first bear came on the screen, Fudge sat still and watched. And after a while, I forgot all about him and concentrated on the movie. It was much better than I thought it'd be. It showed all these bear cubs and how they lived. I'm not sure when I realized Fudge was gone. I guess it was when I turned to ask him if he had any popcorn left. I had already finished mine and was still hungry. I was really surprised to see he wasn't there. I mean, 1 minute he was sitting right next to me, and the next minute he was gone. "Hey, Dad," I whispered to my father. "He's gone." "What?" my father asked. "Fudge isn't in his seat." My father looked over. "Where did he go?" "I don't know. I just noticed he was gone." "Let me out, Peter. I will find him." "Should I come too?" I asked. "No, you can sit here and watch the rest of the movie or picture. He's probably wandering around by the candy counter." Excuse me. I stood up to let my father out. I wondered what my mother would think if she knew Fudge was lost in the movies. What do you think Mom would say? She probably wouldn't be too happy that her baby was missing, would she? Where do you think he is? A few minutes later, the picture stopped, right in the middle of a scene. The soundtrack trailed off like a broken record. All the lights came on. The audience let out a groan. Some kids called, "Boo! Boo!" Then my father and 2 ushers and a man in a suit. So the ushers are the people that work at the theater. The man in the suit was probably either the manager or security guards. "He was sitting right here," my father told him, pointing to the empty seat on the aisle. "Well," the man in the suit said, "we've checked the restrooms and the office. He's not behind the candy counter. We'll have to search the theater." He cupped his hands around his mouth and shouted, "Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? We'll continue with our film in 1 moment. But first, we have to find a 3-year-old boy answering to the name of Fudge." Now, some people laughed when the man said his name. I guess Fudge does sound funny if you're not used to it. I thought, maybe he's been kidnapped. Boy, would my mother be mad. That crazy kid, you can't even take him to the movies. Then I thought, who'd want to kidnap him anyway? "What should I do, Dad?" I asked. "Why don't you walk up and down the aisle, and I'll call for him, Peter." "Okay," I said. "Here, Fudge." I started calling down the aisle. I sounded like I was calling a dog. "Come on out, Fudge." When I got down to the first row and called, "Here, Fudge," he popped out at me. He scared me so bad I yelled, "Oh!" "Hi, Peter," he said. "Hey, I found him," I called. "I found him! I found him! Here he is!" Then I turned around to my brother. "You dope! What are you doing way down here? And why are you sitting on the floor?" "Wanted to touch the bears," Fudge said. "But bears are all gone." He spread out his arms and said, "All gone." My father and ushers and the man in the suit ran to us. "Fudge," my father said, scooping him up, "are you all right?" "He wanted to touch the bears," I said. "Can you beat that?" "Well, I guess we can continue the picture now," the man in the suit said. He cupped his hands around his mouth again. "Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. 1 young man has been found safe and sound. Now we return to the conclusion of A Bear's Life. My father carried Fudge back to our seats. He held him on his lap for the rest of the show. I guess he wasn't taking any more chances. Later, when we got home, my father explained to Fudge that movies are like TV. It's just a picture. There's nothing to touch. Fudge listened, but I don't know whether he believed my father. I had a feeling he still thought those bears were in the theater somewhere. I made up my mind that I would never take my little brother to the movies. Never. At least not until he was 9 or 10. My father said he was going to cook us something special for dinner to celebrate finding Fudge in the movies. I thought that was really strange because, as far as I know, my father can't cook anything. He doesn't even know where my mother keeps the peanut butter, the dishes, or the pots and pans. Lucky for him, I was there to show him. "What are you going to cook, Dad?" I asked. "A super-duper omelet. Have you ever had an omelet before? It's got scrambled eggs, and you might put in cheese and onions, maybe some ham or bacon. Sometimes you scramble it all up. Sometimes you might fold it over nice and pretty." Well, that's what Dad's making. Omelet? I'm not sure me and Fudge like omelets. "You'll like this one," my father said, humming as he gathered his ingredients together. "Get me a big frying pan, Peter." "Okay," I said. I gave it to him. He melted some butter in it. "What's going in the super-duper omelet?" I asked while Fudge sat on the floor banging 2 pot covers together. "Well, the eggs, of course," my father said. "Omelets are made of eggs." "And what else?" I asked. "Oh, I think I'll make a mushroom omelet." "Eggs and mushrooms?" I said. "Yes, you'll love it." "I'm not so sure." "You'll see, Peter," my father said. I set up the table while my father cooked. I even put Fudge in his booster chair. When the omelet was done, my father brought it to us. He was still humming. "That's a big omelet," I said when I saw it. It filled up the whole frying pan. "How many eggs did you use?" Now, for an omelet for one person, we typically use 1, maybe 2 eggs, right? How many do you think Dad used? There's 3 people. Fudge probably only eats 1 egg, right? Peter might eat 1, maybe 2. Dad, 2 eggs. Maybe 3. So 6 eggs. That'd be plenty, okay? How many do you think Dad used? My father said, "About a dozen." How many's a dozen? Think about that. A dozen of eggs. Pause the video. Run to the kitchen. Look at the eggs. How many is a dozen? Okay, you're back. You've looked in the fridge. A dozen has 12 eggs. Dad really only needed 6. Let's do a math problem. He needed 6. He used 12. How many times can 6 fit into 12? 6 times what equals 12? Right, 2. So he used twice as many eggs as he needed. That's a big omelet. Mom only cooks 1 at a time. 1 egg at a time, I told him. When you taste this, you'll know why I used them all up. You mean it's that good? I asked. Go on, my father said as he served me. Taste it. I took a bite. It was awful. It was the worst thing I ever ate in my life. But my father was standing there grinning at me. You could use a vocabulary word. He was beaming. He was so proud of this omelet. I didn't want to hurt his feelings. Well, he said. It's nice, I told him, swallowing a chunk whole. I washed it down with a glass of milk. You see, your mother ought to experiment more. Then you'd learn to eat a lot of different things. I don't think Mom ever made me a mushroom omelet, I said. My father put some on Fudge's plate. Then he served himself. Fudge shoved a lot into his mouth at once. I waited, figuring he'd choke on it. Instead, he said, "Oh, good." My father beamed. There's the vocabulary word. He smiled so big, he was so proud. Fudge wasn't smart enough to fool my father, so he must have really liked it. But a kid that can eat flowers and swallow teeth wouldn't know much about omelets anyway, so it's fine. Then my father sat down and tasted his super-duper vocabulary word. He mixed a lot of ingredients together. What's the vocabulary word if he mixed a lot of ingredients together? Starts with a C. That's it, concoction. My father sat down and tasted his super-duper concoction. He not only choked on it, he spit it out. "Oh no," he said. "This is awful. Something went wrong. Maybe the eggs are rotten." "Mom just bought them on Thursday," I said. "Maybe it's the mushrooms then," my father said. "Maybe it's how you cooked it," I suggested. My father jumped up from the table and threw the mushroom omelet into the garbage. Fudge started to cry. "I want more." Do you think Fudge really liked that omelet? No, my father told him. It wasn't any good. Fudge screamed, "Eat it or wear it! Eat it or wear it!" Had Dad taught him a lesson? Fudge was going to eat it no matter what, right? He didn't want to wear it. He threw it, there's a vocabulary word, he flung his spoon across the room. It hit my mother's favorite plant, and the dirt spilled all over the kitchen floor. "Now you stop that, Fudge," my father yelled. "I'm going to make us a nice peanut butter sandwich. Then you're going to have a bath. Your mommy's coming home tomorrow, and we're going to show her how well Daddy managed all by himself. Peter, where does your mother hide the peanut butter?" Question. We've seen this theme. A theme is a recurring element of the story, some type of lesson or thing that we can learn from the story. Peter, the big brother, have we seen him saving the day again and again and again and finding the peanut butter again? So we have this theme that big brothers and sisters, they really do take care of the younger siblings, don't they? We couldn't do without our big brother or sister. After supper, my father bathed Fudge. The only thing he decided not to do were the dishes. He stacked them in the sink and left them for my mother. On Sunday afternoon, we drove out to the airport to meet my mother's plane. On the way there, my father said, wouldn't it be fun if we kept all the things we did over the weekend a secret, just between the three of us, kind of like a man's secret. I agreed not to say a word, and my mother was so glad to see us that she didn't even mention the dirty dishes in the sink. Now, do you think Dad really wanted a man's secret, or was he maybe just a little nervous that when Mom found out what all happened, she would freak out? Yep, Mom would freak out, wouldn't she? 6 weeks later, so we're jumping forward a little bit. 6 weeks later, we were watching TV one night when the new Toddle Bite commercial came on. Remember, Man's Weekend, secret. Does Mom know Fudge was in that commercial? She doesn't. It's a man's secret. "That's me," Fudge said. My mother looked up from the book she was reading. "He does look like you, Fudge, but that's not really you." "Oh, yes," Fudge said. "That's me. See?" My mother squinted and looked harder. "You know, Warren," that's the dad, she told my father, "he really does look like Fudge." Then she laughed. Imagine another boy looking like Fudge. "It's Fudge all right," I said. "It's Fudge all right," my brother repeated. "We didn't tell you, dear," my father said. "We thought that you'd like to be surprised. But that is Fudge." "What?" my mother said, like she couldn't believe it. "You see," I began, "remember that weekend you went to visit Aunt Linda?" Then I stopped and thought about all the things my mother didn't know. Like the puddles Fudge splashed in, and the paper towels up his pants, and how he wanted to touch the bears and got lost, and the mushroom omelet, and Mr. Vincent and his big cigars, and Janet and her goldfish crackers. And I looked at my father and I started to laugh. and so did he. So that's the end of chapter 9. Mom freaked out just a little bit. We'll continue with chapter 10, and we will go over this chapter in our Google Meet today. See you guys later.